smaller each day, huh? Just go out for coffee, or maybe a beer. All right. Did the chair get smaller? Maybe it's that. Anybody have any questions? We good?
So Isaiah Johnson, I guess John said he was the steal of the draft. Why did you guys like him so much, and why do you think he was still there?
Did you say he's the steal of the draft?
That's what John told him on the phone. That's what John told him on the phone. He was the steal of the draft.
Boy, we loved him. We think he complements Trayvon Mullen, very similar guys, long. They both run. You're talking about 6'2", 200-pound guys that run 4.4. They're perfect in what we do. We're a press corner team. Jimmy O'Neill, our defensive back coach, is happier than I've ever seen him. So now we've got some long press corners to go along with Garyon and everybody else we have, Garyon Conley and Worley and all our guys. So bottom line is we're ecstatic with those corners.
Mike over here.
Yes.
For several years, at the end of the draft, you've been in a different mindset, obviously.
Yeah, I was already drinking a beer and having dinner.
Can you compare what it feels like for you right now? And I know you still have undrafted free agents and everything else, but to be in this moment now versus last year and the previous years coming off of a draft on television.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple different thoughts. One is, and I may have mentioned this to you guys before, I'm not sure, but at Senior Bowl this year, I ran into Ozzie Newsome at we were out to dinner, and I've known Ozzie forever. And he congratulated me on the job, and I said, any advice? And he said, Mike, he said, all I can tell you is that having an opinion is a hell of a lot easier than making a decision. And I think I said this the other night, and you kind of feel the weight of that in the draft room, especially when you're trying to trade back. And, you know, your head coach, like most coaches, wants you to trade up and go get their guy. And you're trying to tell Coach Gruden that, you know, if you trust me, if we trade back 10 spots, our guy's still going to be there and we'll pick up another pick. And John's staring at you and just like, and you're just sitting there going, man, it's a lot different than NFL Network. And that guy better be there in 10 picks. But the difference is just ownership, skin in the game. It just meant something different this week for me. And at the end of the day, we won't know how we did for a couple of years, but we couldn't feel better today because I think we stayed consistent with our philosophy and we drafted the kind of guy that we want to bring into this building.
It made for some good television when they were talking on the network about you stumping the truck in the 7th round.
Yeah, the producer, Charlie Uke for the NFL Network, texted me and he said, will you tweet something out and try to, because we used to play that stump the truck game on Saturday. And the irony was, I'm not really tweeting anymore, but when I finally looked down, I didn't see the message for a while. When I looked down, we were on the clock with Bell from Prairie View. And I thought, what a perfect situation to text him back, Quentin Bell, as a stump the truck. And of course, he got the text, related it to the truck. The truck started looking for him, and then immediately thereafter, they announced we took the kid. So it was just kind of cool. At that point, it was our final pick. I thought we could have a little fun with it, and it was cool.
Mike, you talked about the trading up and trading down. Yeah. You did trade up for Renfro. What was it about him that made you guys want to make that move up for him?
Boy, I've loved his game for the last few years. I mean, when he caught that touchdown pass against Alabama a few years ago in the national championship game, when you're watching a lot of tape of kids, and you're watching a lot of Clemson and a lot of Alabama and a lot of the teams that have a lot of draftable kids, you know, we get caught up in all Clemson's kids, you know, half of which we drafted, obviously. We get caught up in the first round, the second round, and all these kids they had in their defensive front. And then you put their offensive tape on and you kind of go, why don't people talk more about Renfro? And then we saw him up close at the Senior Bowl. And when I would go to the South practices, I'd just be like, he has an innate feel for the game as far as separation, how to get open. And I didn't even really care what he ran. He ran faster. I was almost to be honest with you, I was almost disappointed he ran into 4.5s at the combine because I didn't want people to notice him any more than, I mean, his production on the field was outstanding. He's got an innate ability to separate. And when this is what I've learned from quarterbacks over the year, the great quarterbacks, they love somebody who can win quickly when there's pressure. Okay, when you're bringing 6 and you only got 5 blocking, and you're Tom Brady or you're Drew Brees, you're Matt Ryan. I've talked to these guys over the years, and they've all said the same thing. Give me a quick guy that can win in the middle of the field immediately when we get pressure. I think Derek Carr is going to love this guy. I really do. I think we took 4 or 5 Senior Bowl players. I got a text from the head of the Senior Bowl, Jim Nagy, and the text was cool. He said, that was your 4th Senior Bowl pick from the South. Apparently, I gave you the wrong team. So coaching and being there helped us a lot. It really is a big deal to be involved in that game.
What did you like about Maxx Crosby in seeing him, obviously, guy coming from a smaller school in Eastern Michigan?
Yeah, he plays every snap like his hair is on fire. That's number one. Number 2, he has length. And number 3, he ran in the 4.6s, low 4.6s, if I remember, at 255 pounds and 6'5". So he's got some twitch. He's got length, he's got twitch. He's got a great motor. What he doesn't have yet is power. He doesn't have strength yet, and he needs to develop that. When I got on the phone with him, I told him that his future was going to be dependent upon a Gruden, but not the one he thought. It's going to be Deuce, and I wanted him to get philosophically connected at the hip with Deuce because he's got to get stronger. But I loved his tape because he plays his ass off on every play.
Hey, Mike, your 7th round pick, Quentin Bell. How unique is it for a guy to have a skill set that can not only play receiver, but pass rushing defensive end as well?
We brought him in for one of our 30 visits, and I'll tell you what, our scout, Teddy Atlas, who I was just upstairs with trying to sign some free agents, Teddy Atlas did a great job. He kind of kept this guy alive in my mind, and that's what good scouts do. Like at first I was like, oh, I got to hear about a wide receiver converted to defensive end, and he's from a small school. Come on, Teddy. And he kept bringing him up, and he said, Mike, he was 240 pounds. I was like, wait a minute, he was 222 or 225 he said 240 and he ran 4.4. And that got my attention. And I believe, and I'm not sure about this, but we may have been the only team at his pro day. We were all over him because of Teddy Atlas. He did a great job. And then when his numbers came out from his pro day, I had him earmarked in the back of my mind for that a late 7th round pick, because if he got to free agency, there would have been 20 teams bidding on him. So we took him off the board in 7th. Teddy was there were more guys up there than you guys were erroneously told.
Early in your GM tenure, I know we're only still a few months in, but you talked about how your tenure at the NFL Network prepared you for a lot of what was to come. There was one part of this draft experience that you never did get to experience until these past couple of days, which is to be on the phone with these prospects when they just learn that they're going into the NFL and they're going to be Raiders. What was that like for you to experience that for the first time?
More cool than I thought. And I believe Jon Gruden is one of the best recruiters, one of the best guys to be a face for a franchise. You know what I mean? His energy is unbelievable. So I really believe that Jon should be the first voice they hear, because that's who they associate the Oakland Raiders. Jon Gruden, man. He does an unbelievable, his energy, I told you guys the other night, like he was just at me. When can I talk to him? When can I talk to him? Can I go call him now? I mean, and it was awesome because it was so real. Then I would, for most of them, I would follow them in there and I'd go in and talk to the kids unless we had a trade working. I got choked up a couple times. I really did, feeling the emotion over the phone. I mean, Farrell couldn't talk. I almost couldn't talk. I get emotional about that stuff. It's kind of cool because I remember being a 10th round draft pick, and I remember to this day getting the phone call from the Pittsburgh Steelers and what it felt like. So I'm excited that they're so excited to hear from Jon Gruden, and to the extent I can add just a little bit, it's awesome.
Mike, I know you and John talked about it the other night in relation to the higher-rated quarterbacks, but you go through the whole draft and you don't get a lower round quarterback for developmental purposes or anything. Is there anything to that? Did you consider even getting a lower round prospect as a developmental quarterback, or what's your thinking on how that played out?
Well, we've got a young guy still with Nate Peterman. So John told the truth the other night. I mean, our job's to evaluate, and we went out and did our homework, and that's a position my head coach is always going to be ultra interested in, regardless. And we did our homework. And obviously, we've been telling you for a long time, we think Derek is a franchise quarterback. It's going to take something pretty special to overcome that. We love Derek Carr. We love what we think he's capable of doing in the future. And we felt like we already had enough quarterbacks on the roster at that point. We've done our homework, and we didn't think any of the young, later round guys could beat out who we have.
Just between free agency and the draft now, do you feel like you guys have sort of adequately addressed the need that you had coming in at pass rush, particularly off the edge, and then also just taking a step back and looking at the draft class overall, what do you feel like you were able to accomplish?
Well, to take the second part of it first, I think we just kept talking. You guys are tired of me talking about foundation players, but I believe in it, and John shared that vision, and we talked an awful lot about a lot of guys this week who we want, who would fit this building. And I think what I'm most proud of is we stayed consistent through the entire process. From the day I got here, with John and I sitting down and discussing what we want in this building, how to develop a team. You know, I try to tell people it's easy to kind of spend money in free agency or draft players, but the hard part is developing a team. And that's what we're trying to do. And we're trying to do it by improving and strengthening our locker room with character and hardworking guys that love it. And that's what I'm really proud of. We stuck to that the whole time. You guys are all tired of hearing me say it. I know it. But that's what we talk about. That's what's most important. As far as the defensive end situation, I mean, let's face it. We needed some defensive ends, right? And you guys have been harping on that since I got here. And we didn't think the free agency was going to be the answer for that. I thought we did a really nice job here over the weekend, to the extent that we couldn't even sign any free agent defensive ends because they saw we drafted 3, you know, so they're all staying away from us. So what we got, of course, we got Farrell, length, motor. We got Crosby, length, motor. And then we get this guy from Prairie View, length, motor, 4.4 speed. So we feel like for sure that's a position we've addressed and we're excited about.
Mike, can you take us through what you liked about the LSU tight end, and then also just your evaluation of that particular position group as a whole?
Yeah.
Especially in relation to Darren Waller and maybe
Yeah.
a great opportunity he may have to make an impact.
Yeah. I've got to credit Frank Smith, our tight end coach, for taking a late visit to LSU. We had Moreau was on the South team at the Senior Bowl, and I watched a lot of tape of him, and we liked him. And he wore number 18 at LSU, which, if you know the history and tradition of that number, means something. It means a lot about character and who you are as a person and your work ethic. So we knew who this kid was as a person. Frank believed that there was more athletic ability in this kid's body than we initially thought. We saw him at the Senior Bowl. We liked him. We liked his work ethic. Frank went down late and worked him out and spent an awful lot of time with him. And Frank, the kid timed and worked out better than we all anticipated. I think he ran 4.62, if I remember, at about 255 pounds. And Frank came back all excited, like, hey, this kid's a little more athletic than we thought. I had a chance to get my hands on him, which means he's working him out and forcing him through releases off the line. He's stronger. He's faster, and I really believe in this kid's upside. So what we think we found is a tight end that can put his hand in the dirt and block, number one. Number two, we think he's a little bit better athletically than most people think. And number three, we think he's a great complement to Waller, who you just talked about. I was talking to Waller upstairs today. Boy, I thought we almost drafted. A minute, I looked at him and shook his hands. I thought it was Noah Fant. You know, from a height, size perspective, he looked very similar. And he's a very athletic kid, so we feel like we're hopeful that he can be our athletic displaced Y, and we're really excited about the LSU kid, Moreau.
Yeah, I'm wondering if one of the big winners this weekend was Denzel Good. What do you see yourself at guard, and is he right now penciled in as a starter right now?
Well, I mean, he has been all off-season, and I would imagine if we lined up today, I think Tom would probably have him there. You know, he played pretty well at the end of last season. I'm not sure. You know, he's going to have to prove to us he's the long-term answer. He had some initial success at Indy at tackle, wasn't able to sustain it. You know, so we need him to be consistent. I mean, that's going to be his challenge because he has the natural ability and size to be a starting guard in the NFL, but he's got to sustain it and be more consistent.
Isaiah Johnson played a lot of special teams
Yep.
at Houston. A number of guys on this draft class have. Can you discuss in terms of that being kind of a foot in the door for a lot of these guys,
Yeah.
part of the active roster as
Yep.
rookies? Who, in particular, do you think could be immediate contributors in that area?
I mean, you got to understand, Rich Bisaccia, who I've said forever is the best special teams coach in the NFL. I've known Richie for 35 years. We were counselors together at the Joe Namath football camp and when we were in college. He went to Yankton, which I had never even heard of till I met Richie. Anyway, Richie's been all over me in this process about bringing in special teams players, and that has to be a special thing. Huge priority, huge priority of special teams.
Mike, just a couple things for me, more things here, but circling back to day one on Farrell, did you guys get a 40-yard time? I mean, 40-yard dash time on him because he didn't run it.
Nobody did. Nobody did. Everybody asked him for workouts. Everybody asked him. We had him out to dinner, last week or whatever on the 30 visit, and he got teased unmercifully by Christian Wilkins, his teammate, which was really funny. You know, Wilkins kept saying, "Hey, I ran 5:03, but at least I had a time."
How comfortable were you with that in terms of pulling the trigger? I mean, obviously,
Look, John and I had
to do it.
Yeah, John and I had the conversation, and it was kind of like, does it bother us he didn't run a 40? Yeah, a little bit it does, especially because he's such a hard worker and everything. And I finally John and I had the conversation. It finally kind of went to, I just said, listen, we got 3 years of tape. If we can't figure out where this kid can rush the passer and set an edge, it's on us, not on him.
One last thing, when you think back to the television years and post-draft, how did you evaluate yourself? Obviously you had a great reputation, but like all evaluators, sometimes some picks went awry and things like that. How did you process that when you were in that realm? And I know, like you said, you've got skin in the game now. Take us to that.
No, I took a lot of pride in it. I think you should, right? So I didn't really care about the mock draft I did the night, but I put a lot of time and effort into it. But I knew that some grandma in Encino could probably do better than me picking names out of a hat, just because one trade can change the whole thing. So for me, it was just all about trying to be the GM for all 32 teams. And I felt like if I fairly and honestly portrayed what each team needed and why each pick was made and hopefully why, or if I disagreed with it, maybe open up a kind of a different position respectfully. And I felt like if I did that consistently for 250-some picks, I had a good weekend. And I tried to take pride in being prepared and ready to go.
Yeah, before this weekend, you had said that John said, here are 3 first-round picks, don't screw it up. I'm wondering, do you now turn around, so here you go, don't screw it up?
Pretty much. It's a really good question, and pretty much, I'll tell you what, we when we got done today, we had a big hug, and we feel like in the last 4 months between free agency and the draft, we've been consistent. We've got the people we want in this building. And nothing's changed yet. We're a 4-12 football team, and we got to prove it on the field. But we think we got a little bit better each day.
Mike, are you guys going to exercise Carl Joseph's 5th-year option?
I think that's a conversation we'll have with Carl.
When you spoke with Maxx Crosby today, we saw the video, and you talked about Jon being, you going up to Jon and talking about his film and kind of just tapping on his shoulder about this guy. And I thought it was a good example of just the synergy between you two. Can you detail that a little bit more in terms of what the back and forth was like between you two throughout the process from a pre-draft standpoint and then these past 3 days?
Are you talking about Maxx, or are you talking about just generally?
Just generally you and,
Yeah.
you and Gruden.
I couldn't be happier with with the way our relationship has developed, and this is a guy with a strong opinion, okay, and he brought me in to have an equally strong opinion, and I think that's the important thing that people have to understand. I didn't come here to just kind of try to set a board. I came here to work with Jon and try and help him build a football team, a championship football team. I also knew I had to come in here and earn people's respect. I knew a lot of the people in this building, coaches, et cetera, but step number one for me is always you got to earn people's respect, and that's how I look at it every day of my life. So Jon and I spent an awful lot of early mornings in this building, watching film, arguing about players. I was in with the coaches, I don't know how many days in free agency and draft prep, just me, Jon, and the entire coaching staff grinding tape together and arguing about players. And I was vehement about the kind of guy we want to bring in this building. I had a lot of, coaches just want talent. Sometimes they don't really care about the rest of it. They want talent. And I think it was a really good, I think we complement each other because when I had a strong opinion, Jon listened. And when Jon has a strong opinion, I listen. And we go at it a little bit, which is really good. But at the end of the day, I think the important thing is when we make a decision, it's a Raider decision. And when we bring a kid in this building, when we can disagree all we want. But when that guy gets drafted or signed by the Raiders, he's ours. He's a Raider. Thanks, guys. Have a good rest of your weekend, okay? Thanks. Appreciate it.